My name is Jillian Kaplan, and welcome to this episode of Telco to TechCo. I am here with Glenn Exline. Glenn, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely, Jillian, and thanks for having me today. So I lead the enterprise architect practice for the telco organization here at Dell Technologies. I've got a global reach, which means I get to talk to telcos all around the world and see what's going on across the industry. And my team is kind of the technical leads within the account from a Dell standpoint, going all the way from the IT organization through core and all the way out to the RAN and the edge as well.
That's awesome. So you've been talking to, like you said, global communication service providers. So when you think of the conversations you've had with them, what do you think is like the very first step in getting to cloud transformation? Because that is where the industry is headed. What's that number one step that a CSP can take to move forward?
Yeah, from my viewpoint, Jillian, the number one step is actually figuring out where you're going, developing a North Star,
Mhm.
and making sure that North Star is about where you want to go, not where you've been. I see a lot of telcos out there who try to incorporate, everything that they're doing today into that North Star vision, and that always becomes a challenge. I've got one customer who claims to have dozens of failed cloud implementations because they've done exactly that. Tried to drag the legacy along, both from a technology and an operating standpoint, and that just never seems to work out. Then, the next step is understanding that this transformation is not just a technology upgrade. It's really a technology upgrade with an operational and a cultural change.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is if I upgrade the technology and I continue to operate it in the same way that I did previously, then I really don't gain the benefits of that transformation. I've got a picture in one of my decks of a horse pulling a Humvee full of hay. And I use that to illustrate this idea of upgrading the technology but not changing your operating model. And realistically, by doing that, at best you're going to get the same result, but typically you'll get an even worse result. I.e., the horse can probably drag more hay if he doesn't have to drag the Humvee, and the Humvee can certainly pull more hay than an individual horse. So those are kind of the first steps that I always suggest to customers.
Yeah, and you touched a little bit on this, right? But there have been hurdles for communication service providers, right? As you talked about, where they are upgrading one piece but not the other, and you've got to be prepared to really do an overhaul. So, what do you feel like are the hurdles that CSPs have faced? Because we've seen the enterprise sort of take the lead in telecom transformation. Well, I should say in cloud transformation,
Cloud
right?
transformation. Yep.
Cloud transformation. But the telecoms have been a little bit lagging. So, what are some of the hurdles that they have, and why has the enterprise taken the lead, and how can CSPs catch up?
Yeah, and we kind of hit on one in the first question, which is where to get started.
Hmm.
And I think that's an area that CSPs struggle with. Oftentimes, what I see is they try to eat the whole elephant at once, rather than figuring out a small area within their environment where they can upgrade both the technology and start building that operational team to be successful. The other thing that I find that more times than not is business as usual operations tends to get in the way. If I take someone who's been doing things the same way for the last 20 years and I tell them I want them to go build a cloud, that cloud is going to start to look a lot like what they've done over the last 20 years.
Sure.
Uh, and so, getting out of that business as usual or that operations as usual mindset is a big hurdle. And then when we look at how this transformation has gone in the IT environment, where we went from physical servers to virtualization to containerization and finally to cloud native, each of those transformations has driven TCO down and driven operational efficiencies up. I mean, typically in an IT organization, we see somewhere between a 30 and a 60% savings as they move through those different iterations of transformation. when I look at the way that the telcos have done this, for example, going from physical network functions to virtual network functions, um, when I look at the architecture, when I look at the operations for most of the telcos out there, it looks exactly the same as it did in the physical network function world.
Mm.
I.e., I've got a single server running a single VNF, and my architecture and things like redundancy and resiliency are dependent on physical things, multiple servers, redundant networks, those sorts of things. Whereas if you look at cloud native and where IT has gone, they've really embraced this idea of service oriented architectures. And does it really matter if I've got a physical connection up if I can still service the request? So one of the other things that I think that telcos who want to become techcos really need to start thinking about is, how do I change my thought process so that I'm no longer architecting things based on physical servers, physical network connections, but I'm looking at it based on service availability. If you think of the hyperscalers, if a server goes down, a rack goes down, or even an entire availability zone goes down, you still don't have a significant impact to the services being provided. Whereas in the telco world, one server or one rack can have a huge impact into the services that are available.
Sure. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And it's hopefully we're going to see them catch up, right? With cloud transformation. So what are some great examples you've seen of cloud transformation where we're seeing communication service providers be able to catch up with the enterprise customers?
Yeah, and I don't want to make it sound like there are no telcos out there that have started this journey. There are a
100%.
handful out there who, are well on their way to a cloud transformation journey. They started years ago, though. One of them that I was talking to at SVP a couple of months ago said that they started their journey 10 years ago. Um, he also said, however, that he thinks had he been willing to work with external partners, that he might have been able to operationalize this, in half the time that they ended up spending doing it.
Interesting.
The other, yeah, the other thing that I'm seeing out there is the telcos that are being successful on this journey, again, are looking at things like DevSecOps and GitOps as a way of how I'm going to deploy things, how I'm going to do updates, how I'm going to manage my operational environment. So rather than depending on the physical way of interacting with servers as they've done in the past, they're really looking to embrace these cloud native capabilities. And then finally, automate and orchestrate things as ruthlessly as you can. Many of our telcos out there, when I go from a physical network function to a virtual network function, I've got the same silos of people doing the same things via infrastructure as a trouble ticket to be able to deploy new capabilities. Whereas the telcos that I see being very successful out there are the ones who have taken those silos down, automated and orchestrated those events so that they look more like a hyperscaler, i.e., once a device is in a rack, everything else gets pushed to it and tested in an automated fashion until it's ready to come online. And then finally, to go back to the point about being willing to let external partners help you, this is an area where Dell really excels. You know, as as you kind of alluded to earlier, we've been helping customers through this transformation for decades now, and we've helped hundreds of customers go from physical to virtual to container to cloud native, and we're in a position to meet our customers wherever they are, whether they're just getting started on this journey or whether they're well into the journey and are looking at additional ways that they can either drive up operational efficiencies or drive TCO down. So, we're certainly, have a wealth of experience to pull on that is very analogous to the transformation that the telcos are going through today.
And I love that you've been having conversations with telcos, so you have real insights, right? from telcos that are starting their journey to this telco that you mentioned that's been on it for 10 years. So that is a great place for people to understand that like you can be wherever you are today in your cloud transformation journey, but you can still get to where you need to go to, right? So
Absolutely.
sounds fun.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. This was a super fun conversation, and I look forward to future conversations with you.
All right. Thank you, Jillian. I appreciate it.
Thank you.